Well, it took a while, but finally last week it was announced. Yes, official. Mauricio Pochettino, the new US men's national team head coach. I know there's some concerned people there. Was it falling apart? Was Chelsea being dicks about it? No, it was all finalized. He is now the solution. So I want to hear from you, by the way, in the comments. Please let us know your thoughts on Poch. Is he the right choice? Is he the only choice? What is he ranked now in international management? I read somewhere someone saying that he is, at this point, the most credentialed international manager in world football, which I don't quite agree with. But let us know in the comments. And while you're there, like and subscribe to this. And for all our podcast listeners on Apple, 5-star reviews, please, be really, really handy. It does help. It does help, believe it or not. So today, though, we'll talk some Poch with a man that knows all about US men's national team football, formerly of Reading, Newcastle, West Ham, with our very own Craig Forrest, Portsmouth, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago. You know him now from ESPN, Shaka Hislop. Shaka, welcome back to Footy Prime. You were on here years ago, we think, but no one can remember, including yourself.
Yeah, that's about par for the course for me certainly. It's good to be back. I guess I'll say that. I'm not so sure about the knows everything about US men's national team, but I'll give that a go as well.
Why not? You know, you can fake it, I'm sure.
But you're on TV for it, aren't you?
Not for that. Not for that.
What are your thoughts about this? I mean, he's high profile, right? Is he the best available option, as some people are saying? I do wonder about some big names out there, but what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I thought a manager such as Mauricio Pochettino was probably just outside of the US men's national team reach, kind of given the lack of availability of high-name managers, and you see that in club football, let alone international football. Let me put it this way. I know Lee Carsley is the interim for the England national team right now, but had Pochettino not already agreed to be the head of the US setup, I think he would be on a very short list to succeed Gareth Southgate. So for the US men's national team to pip England to that appointment, I think speaks volumes.
He's saying the right things. His press conference was great. You know, he mentioned that the women's success in the States. He says that the US have to believe they can win the World Cup. Well, can they win the World Cup, Shaka?
No. It's my short answer. But he has to say that. In all honesty, there is absolutely nothing any manager could say to that. But exactly as he did. And that kind of, well, you know, I think football people know or don't expect the US to win it. The larger fan base does. And I'll put it in this perspective. In 2006, when Trinidad and Tobago qualified for our first and only ever World Cup, we qualified as the smallest nation at the time to have ever qualified for a World Cup. The evening of the draw for the group stages, I did an interview and I said, listen, we're not going to win the World Cup, but we're going to surprise somebody out in Germany. And you would not believe the criticism I got from the Trinidad and Tobago fan base. How could he say we're not going to win the World Cup? If we don't think that we're going to win the World Cup now, what sense does it make going? So that coming from the smallest team to have ever qualified for a World Cup to the US, who've been there consistently, who are hosting. As I said, while I think football people understand or certainly don't believe that the US are going to win it, as a coach, Pochettino had no choice but to say exactly as he did.
I think Canada can win the World Cup.
Which one? Which World Cup?
I'm sure you do.
It's the hope that kills.
Yeah, the benefit of us being on the outside, and certainly us as fans, is that belief, is that blind hope that keeps us showing up, you know, and I think, you know, as fans we're entitled to that, unless of course you're from Trinidad and Tobago and given our struggles of late, you know, reality keeps banging you over the top of the head, you're not gonna win anything. But to that point, I'm fine with it. We all show up at these tournaments. We all show up to support our team, national team or club team, with a sense of belief that at times isn't at all realistic, but we just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's true, actually, Shaka, because I think about even just from club level, West Ham fans, the expectations were always incredibly high. And even though we had a good squad of players, we probably didn't have the depth to be able to take us past what we accomplished, fifth place in the Premier League. It was just a little bit too far. I think I remember, and it was Hainault. I think we were running or about to do preseason, and Harry said something. Harry Redknapp said something about, well, I think we can win the league this year. And then Razor Ruddock was in behind us. Remember, he was like,
yeah. It's the hope that kills you. It really is. Yeah, that hope kind of gets you through Hainault Forrest on preseason runs, which, to be fair, neither Craig nor I were very good at.
No, but Ludo was unbelievably good at it, and that put the goalkeepers to shame.
Which doesn't help us at all. You've got Ludo near the front of the pack, you and me down at the back, just making sure nobody gets lost. It's not good luck. There's no good luck.
But as footballers, then, would you say you're more realistic than the fans before a season, be it international, be it club football? Do you guys know pretty much, okay, listen, we got a chance here, or we have no chance, or do you have that hope as a player in preseason?
Well, I think over the long piece, over the course of a season, you know what the expectation is. You kind of have an idea as to where we think we should finish. But then each game, you go into each game thinking, if things go our way here, we could get something, and that doesn't matter whether we are playing against Manchester United in their pomp with all the players that they can boast of. There are times that every single time you step on the field, you believe, if we hold out long enough, and if this kind of goes our way, we could get a result, and we have. The other side of that same coin is there are times you've played against the same Manchester Uniteds or the Arsenals or whatever, and they get an early goal or two, and you just know it's going to be for a long evening. But for that brief moment, when the final whistle first goes, every single player on the park thinks that they're going to win the game.
Shaka, it might be splitting hairs or semantics, but there is a difference as a player or your coach. You're trying to instill a culture between having that hope or clinging to that hope and instilling true belief in the crew, in the squad that you've amassed, in the coaching staff, even in the federation. So do you think Pochettino can do this with the US men's national team?
I think so. And I think, again, kind of international format is very different from club format. Club format over the course of a league, as the English Premier League is 38 games, and while you start every single game thinking you're going to win, when you lose, that's not the be-all and end-all. That's kind of a part of a season. With international football and certainly short format international tournaments, every loss kind of hits you a whole lot harder because of its impact. And all right, I know it's an expanded World Cup, but going back to the 32 team format with the groups of four, you lose one, it becomes awfully hard work to make up from there to get out to the group stage, unless you're in Argentina or Spain in 2010. But you lose one, it makes it all the more difficult to get out of the group. And then of course there's a knockout phase where you lose there, you're out. So the mentality, the psychology is a whole lot different between club football and international football. And as a result, it's kind of a different game, which you hear a lot of players saying, which I'm sure Craig will agree with.
Poch, when you look at this American squad, there's a lot of talk around the squad where they're saying on paper very good, but there's a lot of egos and there's a lot of issues within the camp. Do you think Poch is the right guy that can galvanize and bring this group together?
I think Pochettino certainly comes with a pedigree that forces a lot of these players to listen, to sit up and take notice. And maybe because he was not ingrained in the US system before, comes with really a clean slate. But to your question, I'm a little bit, while I hear this is the best US men's national team ever, certainly in terms of talent, I don't agree. I think teams on paper are exactly that. You want to prove that you're the best generation of US players ever. Do it on the park, and I don't think that this team has come anywhere close to it. You cannot convince me that a Tony Mueller, Casey Keller, Brad Friedel, Tim Howard gets into this team. You cannot convince me that a Claudio Reyna, Clint Dempsey gets into this current team quite easily, in all honesty. And you can go along the line for any number of those, and then all of a sudden we're like, well, which of this squad really gets into best of US men's national team? And Christian Pulisic, I'm not even sure Gio Reyna gets it. I'll be honest. I'm not sure how many others. So I say that just to make the point that while on paper people maybe want to point to that, I am in total disagreement. What's needed, though, to the question is that manager who comes in, makes decisions, and is not questioned. It's not questioned by the players. It's not questioned by the administration. Not questioned by the fan base.
Although he comes from Chelsea, right, where he had this enormous pool of players to choose from, most of whom who thought they were better than they really were. So it might be an easy transition, right? He got this whole country to pick, which is almost about the same size as Chelsea's squad last year. Right?
Yeah.
And he can handle ownership. It's not ownership with the States, obviously, but upper management pretty well. I think he's a pretty good diplomat. He's been at PSG, right? Yeah. He's been at Chelsea now, some big clubs, and found a way regardless.
Pochettino has been, to use your term, the ultimate diplomat in that regard. He's had difficulty in his last two clubs, in Chelsea and PSG. I think that's more to do with the club and issues within either of those clubs. But then when you look at the successes that he had at Spurs with Daniel Levy, and how while kind of building the squad to compete, they got the Champions League final. They could have won the Premier League, as certainly threatened at the very top. He did show, while managing Daniel Levy, and never really kind of questioning Levy in the way that I think many fans and Jose Mourinho, for instance, or Antonio Conte questioned. Even Postecoglou is starting to sound a little disgruntled. But you never saw that with Pochettino, and again, arguably, had the best successes as a Spurs manager than all of those on that list. And yes, the Chelsea situation I thought was pretty unique in world football in terms of the size of the squad, the egos. I thought he started turning things around and got Chelsea on the right footing, but then, for all their issues in terms of a squad, they probably have more issues in terms of their boardroom, and that came back to haunt them. So I think Pochettino. Listen, I make no bones about it. I really do like Mauricio Pochettino as a coach. I think he'll do really well for them in both the short and the long term.
We now know why you're on ESPN, because you pronounced all of those names correctly, which we have a really hard time doing. But I wanted to throw, I was watching you and Hercules on right after the Copa, and Hercules has been on our show, and it seems like such a long time ago, but it's only 2 months ago. And the U.S. men's national team, we had a couple of analysts talk about, it was just one game, they would have moved up, but it seems like that's been their story and the narrative recently. How do they change that kind of narrative to what Amy was saying as a belief space, where if you're being honest, they aren't the most talented, so that line has to change. But as a player and as someone who watches the game, how do you make that shift?
I think, culturally, in terms of the discussions around the U.S. men's national team, who they are and how they'd like to play, and also what success looks like. Listen, back in our day, we knew what we were getting when we came up against the US, and you know, a lot of those names that I mentioned. You got a team that were very good. You know, you had few very good individuals, but they were always very well organized. They were physical. They could compete, and they were going to run with you all day long, and they were disciplined. So while, you know, for argument's sake, Trinidad Tobago could put far more skillful players on the park, we would lose our discipline, and you know, we would get frustrated if things didn't go our way. You never got that. You never got that with the US. And then I felt like it was under Jurgen Klinsmann, there was this kind of shift to, well, we have to possess the ball more. We have to be a more possessive team. And it caused this kind of fracture in who you saw the US to be. And now, keeping in mind, this was before Nations League, so the US could almost handpick who they played during international windows outside of qualifiers. So they would go and they would play the European nations, and you know, have to give up possession, but then come back into CONCACAF and expect to dominate possession. And then, you know, and there was this push that it doesn't matter, even if we're playing against the Netherlands or Germany or whoever it may be, we should be possessing the ball more. No, you don't have that. You don't have that player base. You can't possess the ball more than Germany and Germany. You know, and I felt there was this there was this kind of loss of identity, and certainly a consistent identity with the US team. And you see that kind of playing out now. Now, me looking in from the outside, I want to go back to those basics. Go back to you whenever you come up against the US, regardless of who they put out onto the park. You know you're going to get a game for 90 minutes or 120 minutes. You know that there may be 4 or 5 really talented players, but there are going to be 4 or 5 players who are going to be workmanlike. They're going to win every single header. They're going to win 9 out of 10 challenges. And the one that you get away, they're going to come back around and make it more difficult for you. Go back to that. Because I just feel that this version, and again, maybe they're believing a lot of their own hype as to how talented they are. I just feel this version of the US is a little bit easier to beat.
But speaking of that, can they be world beaters if they don't have an elite goalkeeper? I think you might have something to say about that position.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and traditionally, it's one position that the US has always had an abundance of talent around. And, you know, I mentioned so many of them before. The short answer to that question is no. And the truth is, I think the US has had or have world-class talents in between the sticks, but they have kind of gone. Let me. I'm trying to think of how I phrase this nicely.
Don't phrase it nicely. Yeah, just say what you think.
They've gone a little bit above their station. Let me put it that way. No, I thought Zach Stefan was an outstanding goalkeeper. Goes to Man City, he's not going to play. And while I understand, well, yes, I'm really looking forward to this move to the Premier League. You know, it'll be great for me. He goes to City, he doesn't play. He's called upon only in a handful of times, makes mistakes for them, comes and makes mistakes for the US men's national team. And then there's this young upstart called Matt Turner coming through for the New England Revolution. And he displaces Zach Stefan. And I went to see Matt play for the Revs. I live just outside Boston, for those who don't know. So my local club, so to speak, is the New England Revolution. And I went to see him. And I thought, outstanding talent, no question. Then he goes to Arsenal. He's not going to play. He was not going to play ahead of Ramsdale as it was at the time. And he finds himself in exactly the same circumstance that Zach Stefan did. 5 years prior, doesn't play, gets called on occasionally, makes mistakes, it's highlighted because of the platform, and even when he goes out on loan or it's shown to Nottingham Forest, that lack of confidence kind of just continues, and I will almost liken that to a goalkeeper back in our day, Jurgen Sumner, who is our age. I say Craig and I are similar ages. Jurgen Sumner was a very talented American goalkeeper who went to QPR. Saying that, it was a very poor QPR team, but then all of a sudden, in trying to make the grade or make up for how poor they were defensively, he started making bad decisions, and his career kind of nosedived. So there's this kind of history for US goalkeepers. For those who pay attention, do as a Casey Keller did. Go and join Millwall. Work your way through and become the goalkeeper that we saw him go on to be. Now, I will also say that you could use Tim Howard as an example, but Tim Howard for me is more the exception to the rule. Goes to Manchester United, similarly makes mistakes. That one high-profile mistake in the Champions League against Porto, which kind of launched Jose Mourinho as a household name. But not many are able to take the step from Tim Howard did to that criticism at Manchester United, to go to Everton and be as outstanding as he was. That's the exception for those who want to pay closer attention to kind of the history of US goalkeeping and those who made it in European football.
I have a question here, Shaka. I've always wanted to get a good answer to.
2000. Come to me?
Yeah. No, you got you got a great perspective on this. 2000, Canada win the Gold Cup. How unbearable was Craig when you got back to West Ham?
Incredibly so. I will say that. So I'd picked up I think it was a thigh injury or a hamstring injury early in the year, and my plan was to go meet up with the Trinidad Tobago national team myself. West Ham were playing Bradford at Upton Park. I had my bag, I had my suitcases in the car. As I said, I'd been out for 2 or 3 weeks. And then, so I wanted to get one game in before I joined the national team. 4 minutes into that game against Bradford, I got a challenge from Dean Saunders. And I'll reiterate, it was not a foul. It was just one of those things. Broke my left ankle. Oh. So I don't go. And Trinidad Tobago meet Canada in the semi-final, was it, Craig?
That's right.
In the semi-final, Craig, I mean, he could turn his back and the ball would hit him in the back of the head. He just all tournament long just made save after save, got in the way of every single thing. Didn't you win Mali tournament, Craig?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you see.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I remember Craig won play of the tournament because that's all I heard about for about 12 months. That's all I heard about. But credit to him, and I don't say this lightly. Knowing Craig as I do, and as I got to know him during our West Ham days, kind of recognizing the goalkeeper he was at Ipswich, understanding some of his frustrations towards the end of that time, coming to West Ham, getting to work alongside him for as long as I did, and I credit two people with getting the best out of me as a goalkeeper. Les Sealy, our coach, may he continue to rest in peace, and Craig. So I was as annoying as it was, I was absolutely delighted for Craig that he got that opportunity to show who he was, remind everybody exactly who he was.
You know, Shaka, one of the things that people always ask is the relationships you have with other goalkeepers. And generally speaking, I think people are surprised to hear that, you know, you build quite a a relationship with the other goalkeepers, and it's not down to us who they pick. You just go out there and you get along. And we had an absolute gem of a bunch of guys that actually played with Ludo there. Leslie was fantastic. Stephen Bywater, yourself. I mean, we had a couple guys that came in. David James was a little bit of a rock the boat a little bit, but more than not, it's a special fraternity for sure. As a goalkeeper union, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and I truly believe that for goalkeepers to be at their best, you have to have that unity of the entire goalkeeping, the goalkeeping position at any club. So it's no real surprise that I played my best football at West Ham, because that's where I got on best with all the other goalkeepers, and I absolutely stand by that.
Shaka, we were talking yesterday about the incident between John Hartson and Niall Berkovic, and the camera to my left, and you were down the other end of the field. I don't know if I've ever talked to you. Well, I'm sure we have, but about what that looked like from your angle, because from where I was, it was an absolute disaster.
It was awful. It was awful. I mean, at the best of times. I mean, I was on his knees when John hit him, and to be fair, if John was on his knees, he and Al Berkovic would probably be the same size. I mean, it really was. And listen, I know John. I like John, and I especially kind of looking back on football and recognizing a lot of the things as I do now as an older guy. I can't help but wonder what the hell was John going through. I have to feel that he was going through something off the field to react that way, because it was so totally unwarranted. It came from absolutely nothing. And as I say, Al Berkovic is a small, kind of feeble guy. He's on his knees and kind of lashes out at John. That's not going to hurt anybody, let alone John Hartson. So it was awful. It really was awful. And the truth is, the kind of attention that it garnered and criticism that John got from it was justified, because it was a nothing incident.
And our dressing room wasn't like that. I mean, overall, we had one of the best.
Like it wasn't at all like that. And I mean, Al could be a little bit annoying. Right? Let's be honest. Al could be a little bit annoying, but I don't think there was anything about Al Berkovic or that anything that warranted that. It was awful. It really, really was.
Yeah, not to condone that kind of behavior, but John Hartson on the pitch he's a character, right? And that West Ham room was full of characters, from Razor onwards, yourselves included.
Yeah.
Is the modern game just lacking that? Have we lost that? Will it ever come back, those type of colorful characters on the pitch?
Well, I'd like to think that the game still has those characters. Now, listen, I haven't been a part of a dressing room for a long time. What's changed a lot is the scrutiny involved in being a part of a dressing room. We could go out together as a team and have a meal and have a few drinks and be a little bit silly. Obviously there were limits to everything. But nowadays you can't, or without being filmed. So you can't even just kind of go out and let your hair down. So now I within the dressing rooms, as I say, I would like to think that there's still those characters, those big personalities, but players have just become kind of used to and more aware of every single thing that goes into what happens off the field, and including what happens on it. So I kind of, money aside, I kind of like our era a whole lot better, where at least we could still be ourselves, because ultimately we're a bunch of young men living our boyhood dreams, and I think we should be allowed to enjoy that.
Neil, I'm calling you Neil because your name is Neil Shaka Hislop.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking Shaka is quite a name as far as you had to choose. Now, I have two questions. One, did you get to choose, or was someone always calling you Shaka? And number two is, if you went by Neil, what was your job going to be? Neil Hislop sounds like a fucking accountant.
It does.
Or a left
Or
back.
a librarian. Now, did you like Shaka's an amazing name, but Neil, I'm just like, could you have been this great football player, ESPN commentator, TNT national?
Probably not. Probably not. So, but the only subject I was really good at school was math. So if I was Neil, I probably would be an accountant. Or I went to Howard University. I'm drinking from a Howard University cup, by the way. I went to Howard University and I graduated in mechanical engineering. So it would probably be something pretty mundane like that. And to the first part of the question, no, I never got to choose. My parents have always and only called me Shaka. And the long story to that is, my mother, as a young girl growing up in Trinidad, there was some actor or something of the sort, Neil, and she just loved the name, and she swore right then that her first boy child was going to be called Neil. But my dad insisted that his kids would also have an African name to reflect our heritage. So I got the name Shaka from Shaka Zulu. Again, just kind of reflecting that African heritage of ours. And my parents have never called me anything. So I've got two younger brothers. We're all the same. I've got Terrence Kona and then Brian Cali as brother. And we've all three of us have always and only gone by our middle names.
Remember when there's an article written about you, and I remember going, oh my God, like Shaka's as bright as they get. And you worked at Nassau, but they made a big deal of that. But I don't think you did much more other than play solitaire, did you?
Don't tell everybody, Craig. I was supposed to be all that secret. So,
Minesweeper and solitaire for Shaka.
So this is the long story, and it allows me to tell my favorite dad joke. Is my junior year at Howard, I got a summer internship at NASA headquarters, no less. I always remember my mentor there was a guy by the name of Greg Sweetek, who couldn't have been more than 35. He was the head engineer on Space Station Freedom, and his job really was to pull all the parts from all the different NASA subcontractors and different offices into one to make Space Station Freedom. And he was the guy I worked under. I'm a junior at university. So wait for it. Everything went over my head. Yay! It never fails. It never fails. But I got to sit in on meetings and just kind of see how things went. But again, I'm a junior at university, and these quite literally are the brightest rocket scientists in the world at the time. So yeah, I played a lot of solitaire.
And now you're slumming with Footy Prime. Well done. Your trajectory. It's all about trajectory in science, right?
But Shaka, though, you would know, though.
Bumpy landing. You can go on and on all day.
You would know, though, right? Like, do they have aliens at NASA headquarters?
No, I didn't see any in the aliens. There's a separate bathroom for aliens. But I never saw anybody. I
want to see that urinal. That'd be really interesting. All right. I think listen, we could keep going. Anyone else got a question for Shaka before we I
had one more, and it was just because it's a Craig story.
Oh.
Craig, if you're going to regale us, wasn't it Shaka when you had your one unprofessional night of football? And
yes, it was.
And he did. Can you regale us with that story a little bit?
Yeah. Shaka, you probably might remember that, but I don't know who are we playing. Oh, we're playing Sunderland. Don Hutchison was playing,
right?
And you got injured. You pulled up with an injury at halftime, and I had been out only time in my career that I went out the night before, because I'm like, Shaka never gets hurt. I'm going to go out for a bevy. I'll sit on the bench. I'll be absolutely fine. And there's Shaka. He's got to come off. And I was standing over you in the dressing room, and I was like, Shaka, you got to play. And he goes, I can't, big man. I can't. I went out last night. I can't see.
just save the middle ball.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Don Hutchison ended up scoring, who ended up at West Ham with us. Great lad. Yeah. He ended up scoring, and that was I came around the wall, and I saw 3 balls, and I picked the wrong one.
I'm sorry.
See, again, you couldn't do it nowadays, right? There'd be cameras out. Oh, Craig Forrest on the piss, on the lash.
Exactly. Oh, man. Those were some days, though.
And then, Shaka, also, you went through the university system. That is quite rare. You don't see somebody go through university very often and reach to the heights that you did. You're going to Reading was a bit of a story for you, and obviously you weren't sure what was going to happen there, but you had a good deal, and it certainly played well for you when you moved from there to Newcastle, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And to that aspect of going through the university system, I'll be honest, I didn't have much choice. So again, to not to age us, Craig, but this is pre-MLS. So there was no professional league in the US, certainly no professional league in Trinidad Tobago, and then coming from high school in Trinidad. Everybody just kind of went to the US, played at university, got a degree, and got a job in whatever that was, and that was the path that I intended to follow. I'll be honest, and then speaking to Greg Switek at NASA, I actually had offers to continue to do my master's in engineering on scholarship, and I remember talking to him about it, and he said, "Listen, give it a try, give it one go. If you don't make it, you can always come back to engineering. But it's better to give that a go and then, do that and wonder what if. And then, pieces of the puzzle just kind of fell into place. So I'm playing at Howard. I decided I'd really like to give this professional thing a go. I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to do this. I get drafted by the Baltimore Blast. Indoor team. So while there was no MLS, it was a professional indoor league. I got drafted by the Baltimore Blast, and they are going on a tour to England that summer. So it's been the summer of '92. Their starting goalkeeper gets called into the Puerto Rico national team. So here I am, even though the head coach, Kenny Cooper Sr., I'll expound on that a little further in a minute, who was a former goalkeeper himself for Manchester United. So I told Kelly Cooper, listen, I have no intention of playing indoor. I'd really like to go play outdoor. So draft me if you want, but chances are I won't be. My dog's just seen something going on. Apologies. But they draft me anyway. So anyway, and then roll the clock forward to this game. We play against Aston Villa. Dwight York just joins Aston Villa. I play both games. I get man of the match, certainly in one. I can't remember if I got in the second, but I played really well. And a Reading scout sees me, and they offer me a trial. And 2 months later, after our initial trial started, I signed my first professional contract, September 10th, 1992, for £400 a week. Eat your heart out, killing Mbappe. So I tell the story about Kenny Cooper as well. So when I'm training with the Baltimore Blast, Kenny, the head coach, he's there. There's his son, Kenny Cooper Jr., is 5 or 6, running around in a dire park, just kind of kicking the ball every which way. Then roll the clock forward 15 years. Kenny Cooper Jr. is one of my teammates at FC Dallas. Talk about coming full circle.
That's crazy.
Also, you can tell you're a mechanical engineer because if you're have a kid running around in diapers at 5 or 6, you don't really understand the biology of humans.
Well, saying that, I've got 5 kids, so I should. I should know what. Yeah, but You know what? You get the point of the story. You get the point of the story.
Hey, Shaka, do you still keep in touch with Dwight York?
Yeah. Dwight and I are still very in close contact.
What's he up to these days? I mean, he's one of my, even though he played for United, who I despised, he's one of my favorite players of all time. What a great player he was.
He moved out to Dubai, and Dubai is home for him now. So he still does a lot of media work. He was coaching out in Australia with MacArthur. Actually, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was announced that he won his wrongful dismissal case against the owner of MacArthur, and the courts ordered him to pay up. But he still looks every bit as fit as he did when he was playing. I just waited for that next opportunity. So between that and doing media work and doing a lot of ambassador work for Manchester United, he's going well. So Dwight and I played in our first. Dwight, Russell Latapy, and for those who may follow cricket, Brian Lara played in our first national team together. It would have been the national under-12 team at 10 years old. Dwight's a couple of years younger than me, so Dwight was playing under-12s at 8, and of course he played in that game November 19th, 1989 against the US, where the US needed to win in Trinidad. Trinidad Tobago just needed a draw to qualify for the 1990 World Cup. Dwight was only 16 then, played in that team as well. So I've played literally with Dwight from the first time I ever pulled on a national team shirt at 10 years old to the last time, which was at the 2006 World Up.
Okay, but Brian Lara? You play with Brian Lara as well? He was a footballer, right? What position did he play?
Brian Lara played up front and on the wing, if memory serves correctly. So Brian played in that under 12 team through probably under 14, and then he then began to we all played cricket together. I played cricket in the same club with Brian growing up.
Really?
But then Brian obviously was excelling at cricket at that age, and began to started to focus more heavily on his cricket while we focused on our football.
But you must have been a bowler, right? With your stats.
Yeah, I was.
So you bowled against Brian Lara.
I bowled against So
forget West Ham, forget the Premier League, forget I don't care about that shit. That is amazing.
Yeah, suffice to say, Brian Lara beat my bowling all over Port of Spain. It really was. It really was bad. And we joke about it to this day. I tell Brian he owes me money because he was able to hone his batsman skills on my bowling, because it was pretty advantageous what he did to me.
He was the greatest, right, Lara? You reckon?
Yeah. Well, every single Trinidad Tobago citizen would say as much. Really, I'm very biased, but for me, I have Brian Lara over everybody else.
I mean, Gary Sobers was a long time ago, right?
And Gary Sobers was before us, and Gary really remains a mentor had been a mentor to Brian through his entire playing career, and remains as such. Those two are very close, Gary Sobers and Brian.
First man to ever hit 6 sixes off one over, Gary Sobers.
Yeah.
If you know about snooker, Shaka, you're gonna have James Sharman in your bedroom talking to him all night.
I could talk forever about cricket. You kidding me? I'd love to. Listen, we are out of time though, but that's great, Shaka. We'll bring you back on the next Windies tour, and we'll get into some depth about where they are as a nation in the cricket world.
I'll be probably as hurtful to talk about this Trinidad Tobago, but you'll forgive me if I forget I was on. I was on at some point before. I'll totally forget. Coming out of the show before you do it. That's just part of being 55 now. We really live day to day.
Shaka, thanks, mate. Really enjoyed this. Enjoy the rest of the season, and we will chat again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Shaka.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
What a legend, Shaka Hislop.